ABA, there wasn't the sort of the connection to the real world so much. It was a lot, all just sort of like physical. I never used any iPads. The amounts of children that you work with. Typically the ABA agencies had hundreds and hundreds of families that they were serving. They were always overworked, and they were just over the top. The caseload of all my bosses was always, that was their number one complaint. They had too many families. They could not help them all. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the time. And so you get, when it becomes that way, these people who are in charge of each child are going to see them like maybe once a week, once every month even. And then, you know, the actual, as they called it, therapists, we saw them more often, but the people who were in charge of developing the curriculum and what we were working on with these kids never really saw the kids. And so they didn't have time to focus and to actually cater to the needs of these children as well as they could have and needed to be. And so lots of problems arose. ABA was all about behaviors. So it's like, correct these behaviors. Well, in my opinion, if you look at where these behaviors coming from, it's not, they're not trying to act out and make your life harder. They're expressing anger and frustration because they don't have the means to express themselves. We've even seen a reduction in some of the kids of self-injurious behaviors, and I never saw a reduction in behaviors with ABA, but that's because you're sort of like training them not to and punishments. That's another thing. No punishment, no positive reinforcement here. We're not training animals. I love that. I hated, it was very dehumanizing, I thought. With ABA, it was all this like, oh, good job, here's a piece of candy. Like, literally, that's what we did. ABA says, basically, if you reinforce positive behavior and you ignore negative behavior, sort of, that's the main idea. Because all behaviors are attention-based, or a lot of these, like, negative biting, scratching, screaming, etc. So if we ignore them, we don't give them any attention, the kid's not getting what they want out of that behavior, and so they'll stop doing it. That's the idea. Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, that sounds all good in theory, but maybe they're screaming because they're really hungry and they can't tell you that, or running up to somebody and scratching them, that's not a socially acceptable behavior. So yeah, we can ignore it and train it away maybe, but it doesn't change the fact that they've just run up and scratched a member of the community. And so I agree with the idea that that's not something that should be ignored. You should treat them as you would any other person. We're fighting for equality. Treat them like you would treat someone who just scratched a random member of the community. Make sure that they know that's not okay. Do not ignore it. I highly, highly agree with that tenet of the way you do what you do. Yeah. It's not okay. It's not something to be ignored. I think that's sort of giving a mixed message. This ABA idea of ignoring the negative.